Greetings. My name is Ben, and I'd like to share my story with you about my wonderful encounter with a beautiful dragonfly that I named Vince. On September 9th, 2009, yes, that's right, the date was 999, I grabbed my camera and headed out for a hike at the Finch Arboretum, an awesome park just west of downtown Spokane, Washington. It was a fine, blue sky, sunny summer day, and I arrived at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I walked over by the creek and noticed a dragonfly struggling in the water. He was trying to fly, but he couldn't. His wings were waterlogged and too heavy and wet for him to be able to take flight. I noticed he was headed for a waterfall about 20 feet away. Although it was only a 10-foot waterfall, I figure that's pretty big for a little dragonfly. I didn't know what it would do to him. Thinking fast, I grabbed a long-stemmed cattail and used it to offer the dragonfly a way out of the water. About 5 feet before the falls, he grabbed on, and I was able to pull him to safety. He held on tight to the stem, and I brought him over to a warmed-up cement slab thinking it might help dry him out quicker. All the while taking some great pictures of him because, of course, he wasn't flying anywhere. He was very waterlogged and he wasn't moving at all. Yet he did appear to be flashing a grateful smile at me for saving him. 20 minutes later, he still wasn't hardly moving, yet I could tell he was alive as he would turn his head and watch me. I decided at that point that I would bring him home with me and see if I could dry him out under a small light bulb and maybe recuperate him. I put my finger down in front of him and he climbed aboard. Once in my car, I gently placed him in the passenger seat and proceeded back to my home. After arriving home, I placed my new friend, who I named Vince, in a shallow box. Underneath a lamp, the heat from the bulb I thought would help warm him up and dry him out. After about 10 minutes, he was starting to move his feet and wings. A good sign, I thought. It was getting to be dinner time for me, so I took care of that, and after dinner I noticed that he hadn't moved an inch, not at all. By the time I was ready for bed, he still hadn't moved. I left the box uncovered and went to sleep, not knowing if he would take flight in the middle of the night and if I would find him anywhere else in the apartment. In the morning, I found him on the other end of the box. He had finally moved around some. I decided that I would make an attempt to take him back where I found him and see if he would take off there. I brought the small box he was in out to my car and set it in the passenger seat. He was just sitting there looking content to go for a drive. We drove the few miles to the Arboretum, and I coaxed him onto my finger again, which he did gladly. So with Vince clutching my finger, I walked out to the creek area that I'd found him at the day before. It was another gorgeous day, and as I looked at Vince, he looked straight back at me, and I felt like there was a communication taking place. Thought I even saw a smile on his face. He was gripping tightly to my finger as I walked. I was halfway expecting him to take flight at any time, but he didn't. When we got to the area that I'd found him at, I spoke with him and I told him that he should fly off and find his family and let them know he was okay. About 10 seconds later, he did just that. And in grand fashion, he took off from my finger, flew straight up in the air about 5 feet, and then he did a loop-de-loop for me. Very fancy. And he took off flying as good as any dragonfly I've ever seen. Like there had been no problems. I felt a huge rush of joy in my heart as I stood there and watched him soar in the sky. And then he was gone. It really struck me that he could have flown away at any time, but waited until we had our proper farewell. Vince was a very considerate house guest, and I'll always have a fond memory of our short time together. The next day, I went for a hike about 3 miles away from the Arboretum along the Spokane River, and I had a very unique experience with another beautiful dragonfly. I was walking along the trail when I noticed him, and he was perched on a twig. He allowed me to photograph him from all angles, up very close for about 3 minutes without taking off. This is very uncommon. Although it's not hard to get good close-ups of a dragonfly for pictures, they rarely stay put for more than 5 to 10 seconds, especially when you get close to them. I have wondered if he knew that I was a friend of Vince.